Before the fire went out, that's when the best stories were told. Before you settle in, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the Sleepy Griot. It helps keep these stories alive and brings more authentic African mythology to your nights. And tell me, what time is it where you are right now? Drop it in the comments. I love knowing when and where around the world these stories find you. Welcome. I'm glad you're here with me tonight. Tonight we journey to the Zambezi River. The great river. The river of life. The river that flows through the heart of southern Africa. Through Zimbabwe. Through Zambia. Through landscapes that have witnessed human civilization for thousands of years. Through territories where the physical and spiritual are not separate but interwoven. Where the river is not just water but home to forces older than memory. This is a story about boundaries. About the line between day and night. Between the world of the living and the world of spirits. About what happens when the sun sets over the Zambezi and the river transforms from provider to something else. Something dangerous. Something that demands respect and fear in equal measure. The fishermen who work these waters know. They know when to cast their nets and when to pull them in. They know when it's safe to be on the river and when the river belongs to others. They know the rules that must never be broken. And they know what happens to those who break them. This is not superstition. This is knowledge passed down through generations. This is understanding of the river's dual nature. This is wisdom that keeps the living alive and the dead in their proper place. This is why, when the sun begins its descent toward the horizon, every fisherman on the Zambezi River begins their journey home. Not from choice. From necessity. From survival instinct honed across centuries. Let your breathing slow. Let the rhythm of the river carry you. Let yourself understand that some places are shared spaces. That humans are not the only ones with claim to the waters. That there are others. Have always been others. Will always be others. We begin with the river itself. The river of two worlds. The Zambezi River stretches over 2,500 kilometers across southern Africa. It is the fourth longest river in Africa. It drains 7 countries. It creates Victoria Falls, Mosi-oa-Tunya, the smoke that thunders. It sustains millions of lives. Human, animal, plant. It is artery of existence for the entire region. But the Zambezi is more than geography. More than ecology. More than resource. It is living entity. It has spirit. Has consciousness. Has will. This is not metaphor. This is truth as understood by those who have lived beside it for thousands of years. The river is alive. And like all living things, it has moods. Has preferences. Has boundaries that must be respected. During the day, the Zambezi belongs to the living. To the fishermen who cast their nets. To the women who draw water. To the children who play at its edges. To the hippos that bask in shallows. To the crocodiles that sun themselves on banks. To the fish eagles that hunt from overhanging trees. The daytime river is generous. Provides. Sustains. Allows human use of its waters with certain conditions understood and respected. But when the sun sets, ownership changes. The river transforms. Becomes territory of the spirits. Of the ancestral dead. Of forces that predate human civilization. of beings that allow human use during day but reclaim their domain at night. The boundary is clear, is absolute, is enforced with consequences that range from misfortune to death. Every fisherman on the Zambezi knows this, learns it from childhood, not through formal teaching necessarily, through observation, through stories, through witnessing what happens to those who forget or ignore the boundary, through accumulated cultural knowledge that functions as survival manual. You are a fisherman, third generation. Your grandfather fished these waters. Your father fished these waters. Now you fish these waters. You know every bend, every sandbar, every submerged rock, every feeding ground where fish congregate. You know the river intimately. But you also know that intimacy has limits. That knowing the physical river is not the same as understanding the spiritual river. That day knowledge is different from night knowledge. You wake before dawn. This is when fishing begins. In the gray light before sunrise. When the boundary between night and day is still unclear. This liminal time is dangerous. The spirits have not fully retreated. The day has not fully claimed the river. You are cautious. You follow protocols. Before launching your boat, dugout canoe carved from single tree trunk, you make offerings. Small offerings. Maize meal scattered on water. Tobacco placed at river's edge. Words spoken. Not prayers exactly. More like announcements. Requests. Acknowledgements. You are telling the spirits that you are coming. That you mean no disrespect. That you will follow the rules. That you will be gone before they return. You push off. The water is calm in pre-dawn stillness. Mist rises from the surface. The river seems peaceful. Seems safe. But you know this is illusion. The calmness is permission. Is temporary allowance. Is not guarantee. As the sun rises, the river wakes. Not just the water. The entire ecosystem. Fish become active. Birds begin hunting. Hippos submerge after night on land. Crocodiles move from sleeping spots to hunting positions. And the spirits, they retreat. Not far. Not completely. But they withdraw into deeper water. Into underwater caves. Into spiritual dimensions that coexist with physical river but are separate. The day belongs to you now. You fish. You are skilled. Your nets are well made. Your knowledge of fish behavior is extensive. You catch kapenta, small fish that school in thousands. You catch bream. You catch catfish. You catch tilapia. The river provides. This is good day. Your family will eat. You will sell surplus at market. Life is sustained by the river's generosity. But you are always aware of time. Always watching the sun's position. Always calculating. You know approximately when you must begin the journey home. Not when sun touches horizon. Earlier. Much earlier. You need to be off the water, completely off, boat pulled onto shore, net secured on land, before the sun completes its descent. This isn't arbitrary. Isn't over caution. Is absolute requirement. Because the transformation isn't gradual. Doesn't happen slowly as day fades. It's sudden. The moment the sun's lower edge touches the horizon, the river changes. The spirits return. The night river emerges. And any human still on the water becomes trespasser, becomes violator of sacred boundary, becomes subject to consequences. The spirits of the Zambezi. To understand why fishermen fear the river after sunset, you must understand who, or what, inhabits the river at night. These are not simple ghosts, not echoes of the dead. These are powerful spiritual entities with their own natures, their own hierarchies, their own rules and territories. The primary spirits of the Zambezi are called by various names depending on which ethnic group you ask. The Tonga people call them Basangu. The Shona call them Juzu. Other communities have other names. But the essential nature is similar across groups. These are water spirits. They are neither entirely good nor entirely evil. They are forces. They have power. They have requirements. They demand respect. The Njuzu appear in multiple forms. Sometimes as fish with human faces. Sometimes as humans with fish tails, mere people, though that European term doesn't quite capture what they are. Sometimes as beautiful women who emerge from water. Sometimes as serpents. Sometimes as lights moving beneath the surface. Sometimes they are invisible, present only as feeling, as pressure, as knowledge that you are being watched. They are not evil by nature. This is important to understand. They are not demons seeking to harm humans for enjoyment. They are territorial. They are protective of their domain. They enforce boundaries. When humans respect those boundaries, Njuzu can be beneficial, can guide fishermen to fish, can protect travelers, can bring fortune to families who honor them properly. But when boundaries are violated, Njuzu respond. Sometimes with warnings, sometimes with direct action. The severity of response depends on the severity of violation. Depends on whether violator is ignorant or deliberately disrespectful. Depends on violator's history with the spirits. Depends on factors humans don't always understand. The most powerful of river spirits is sometimes called Nyamanyami by the Tonga people. Nyamanyami is not individual spirit, but the river god himself. Serpent deity. Protector of the Zambezi. Guardian of its people. Provider and punisher. Nyamanyami is ancient. Was worshipped long before other religions came to the region. Still is worshipped, though often syncretized with Christianity or other beliefs. Nyamanyami appears as massive serpent. Some say with body of snake and head of fish. Others describe differently. But all agree on his power, on his connection to the river, on his role as ultimate authority over these waters. Nyamanyami is why the river provides fish, why crops along the river grow well, why rain comes in season. But Nyamanyami is also why those who disrespect the river suffer, why violators disappear, why certain areas are forbidden. Then there are the ancestral spirits, not nature spirits like Njuzu, but spirits of dead humans. Ancestors who were buried near the river, who died in the river, who had strong connection to the river in life. These spirits maintain connection after death. They patrol the waters at night. They enforce rules. They communicate with the living through dreams, through signs, through misfortunes or blessings. Your own grandfather's spirit is among these. He drowned in the Zambezi when you were child. His body was found 3 days later, caught in reeds downstream. The family performed proper burial rites, made offerings, ensured his spirit would rest peacefully. But he remains connected to the river. You feel this sometimes when fishing. Sense his presence. Sense guidance toward good fishing spots. Sense warnings when danger is near. But not all ancestral spirits are benevolent. Some died angry. Some died violently. Some were not given proper burial rites. These become troubled spirits, restless, sometimes malevolent. They remain at death location, haunt particular stretches of river, attack those who venture into their territory, especially at night. There are also spirits of those who were taken by the river, who drowned and whose bodies were never found. These are most dangerous. They are incomplete. They cannot rest. They cannot move on to ancestral realm. They exist in liminal state between life and death, between physical and spiritual. They are lonely. They are angry. They seek company. They try to pull the living into water to join them in their eternal incompletion. These drowning spirits are particularly active at dusk, in the transition time when day ends and night begins, when the boundary is thinnest, when living souls are most vulnerable to spiritual influence. This is part of why being on the river at sunset is so dangerous. Not just because you're violating territorial boundaries, but because the drowning spirits are hunting, looking for someone to pull under, someone to join them in endless waiting for bodies that will never be recovered, for funerals that will never be held, for peace that will never come. Then there are the creatures. Not spirits exactly, but spiritual beings that manifest physically. Water serpents that are not quite snakes. Fish that are too large, too intelligent, too aware to be ordinary fish. Crocodiles that are possessed by spirits, that hunt with supernatural cunning. Hippos that serve as vehicles for spiritual forces, that attack with purpose beyond animal instinct. You have seen some of these. Everyone who fishes the Zambezi long enough sees something. Sees fish jumping in patterns that seem deliberate. Sees lights moving underwater where no fish could create light. Sees ripples moving against current, moving in circles, moving in ways that water shouldn't move. Sees shapes in mist that look almost human. Almost. Hears voices calling from water when you know no one is there. These sightings increase at dusk, multiply at night. During day, such things are rare. Spirits maintain distance. Stay hidden. Respect the boundary from their side. But at night, they are everywhere. The river becomes crowded with them. Becomes their domain completely. Becomes place where humans do not belong. The rules of the river. Living beside the Zambezi requires understanding the rules. Not laws enforced by government. Rules enforced by the spirits themselves. Rules that have been learned through centuries of observation, trial, error, and tragedy. Rules that are not written but are known by everyone who lives in river communities. Rule 1. Be off the water before sunset. This is primary rule. Most important. Most consistently fatal when broken. You must complete your fishing. Must pull in your nets. Must secure your boat on land. Must be away from water's edge. All of this before the sun's lower edge touches the horizon. The enforcement of this rule is absolute. The consequences are not gradual. There is no grace period. The moment sunset completes, any human on the water is in danger. The spirits do not give warnings for this violation. Do not offer second chances. You are either off the water or you are subject to whatever the spirits decide to do with you. Rule 2. Make offerings before fishing. Every morning. Small offerings. Maize meal is traditional. Tobacco. Sometimes beer. Sometimes coins. The offering is not payment exactly. Is recognition. Is acknowledgement that you are using something that does not belong solely to you. That you are guest in spirit's home. That you ask permission rather than taking without asking. The offering is accompanied by words. Again, not prayers in religious sense. More like courteous announcement. I am here to fish. I will respect your waters. I will take only what I need. I will be gone before night comes. Sometimes you mention your name, your family, your connection to the river, establishing that you are known, that you have history here, that you are not stranger but part of the community that has relationship with the spirits. Rule 3. Do not fish in forbidden areas. Certain stretches of river are off limits. Always, day or night. These are spirit strongholds. Places where the boundary between physical and spiritual is permanently thin. Where spirits are particularly powerful or particularly territorial. Where the river is dangerous in ways that go beyond physical hazards. These forbidden areas are known. Marked not by signs but by knowledge. By stories. By warnings passed down. By reputation. Everyone knows the bend where 3 fishermen disappeared in single day 30 years ago. Everyone knows the pool where water glows at night. Everyone knows the rapids where voices call out names of the living. You avoid these places. Always. Without question. Rule 4. Never speak disrespectfully about the river or its spirits. Words have power. Speaking carelessly about Njuzu or Nyamanyami can bring their attention. Can be interpreted as challenge. Can cause offense that leads to consequences. You speak of the spirits with respect. With appropriate titles. With acknowledgement of their power and your subordination. This extends to not boasting about your catch. About your fishing skill. About how well you know the river. Such boasting is dangerous. Suggests pride. Suggests that you believe you are master of the river rather than petitioner using it with permission. The spirits respond poorly to pride. Respond by humbling those who display it. Sometimes gently. Sometimes fatally. Rule 5. Do not take more than you need. The river provides. But provision is contingent on respectful use. Taking excessive fish is theft. Is violation of the relationship. The spirits will notice. Will respond. Sometimes by making fish scarce. Sometimes by damaging nets. Sometimes by creating misfortune that extends beyond fishing, illness in family, crop failure, accidents. You fish to feed your family, to earn modest income, not to become wealthy, not to hoard, not to waste. You take what you need, what you can use or sell immediately. You do not overfill your boat. Do not fish every day if yesterday's catch is not yet consumed or sold. You maintain balance. Maintain relationship. Maintain reciprocity. Rule 6. Respect the dead. If you find body in river and this happens, people drown, people are murdered and dumped, people die upstream and float down, you handle it with utmost respect. You do not disturb it unnecessarily. You report it to proper authorities. You may say prayers. You may make offerings. You acknowledge that this was person, that their spirit may be troubled, that you mean no disrespect. Finding body is bad omen. Means spirits are restless. Means something is wrong in spiritual ecology of river. You increase offerings after such finding. Increase caution. Pay extra attention to rules. Avoid the area where body was found for several days or weeks. Allow spirits to settle. Allow the troubled spirit of the deceased to be handled by those with authority to do so. Family, traditional healers, spirit mediums. Rule 7. Never look directly at Njuzu if you see one. This is difficult rule. Human instinct is to look at unusual thing. To stare. To try to understand what you're seeing. But direct eye contact with Njuzu is dangerous. Creates connection. Gives spirit opening to your soul. Can result in being taken. Being called into the water. Being claimed by the spirit. If you see something in the water that might be Njuzu, human-like figure, unusual fish, moving light, you look away. You focus on your work. You do not acknowledge. You do not investigate. You increase your pace toward shore if you are on water. You get to safety. You do not speak of it to others until you are far from the water. Speaking near water might call the spirit's attention more fully. Rule 8. If the spirits call you, do not answer. Sometimes you will hear your name called from the water. In voice that sounds familiar. That sounds like family member or friend. This is spirit attempting to lure you. Testing you. If you answer, if you respond, if you go toward the voice, you are giving permission. Permission for spirits to take you. To pull you in. To claim you. The calling is most common at dusk. When day-night boundary is unclear. When your judgment is slightly impaired by twilight. When the spirits are emerging and testing boundaries. Experienced fishermen know to ignore all calls from water. All voices. All sounds that seem to be communication directed at them. They focus on getting home. On completing the transition from water to land before night fully arrives. These rules are not negotiable. Are not flexible. Are not subject to modernization or reinterpretation. They are ancient. Are proven. Are maintained through countless generations because they work. Because those who follow them survive. Because those who violate them suffer consequences that teach the next generation to follow them more carefully. The stories of violation. Every fishing community along the Zambezi has stories. Not fairy tales. Not entertainment. Warning stories. Teaching stories. Stories that function as cautionary documentation of what happens when rules are broken. These stories are told and retold. Are kept alive deliberately. Because forgetting them means forgetting why the rules exist. And forgetting why the rules exist leads to violations. And violations lead to tragedies that could have been prevented. You know these stories. Have heard them since childhood. Have heard them so many times you can recite them from memory. But they never lose their power. never become boring or irrelevant. Because new violations happen. New stories get added to the collection. The cycle continues. The warnings remain necessary. The first story you learned was about Thomas. Thomas was young fisherman 2 generations before yours. Ambitious, skilled, but impatient. He believed that the sunset rule was superstition, that old people were too cautious, that modern fishermen could fish longer, could catch more, could increase their income by extending their fishing day past sunset. Thomas announced this intention publicly. At the community gathering, he said he would fish through sunset, would prove that the spirits were myths, would demonstrate that fear of night fishing was holding the community back economically. The elders warned him, begged him to reconsider, told him the stories, but Thomas dismissed them, called them old-fashioned, called them afraid of progress. The next day, Thomas went fishing as usual. But when afternoon came and other fishermen began heading to shore, Thomas remained on the water. He continued fishing, continued casting his nets, continued working as the sun descended toward the horizon. Other fishermen, now safe on shore, watched, anxiously, fearfully, but also with morbid curiosity. What would happen? Would Thomas be proven right? Would the spirits ignore this violation? Or would the old warnings be validated? The sun touched the horizon. Thomas was still on the water, still fishing, still visible from shore. Nothing happened immediately. For several minutes, Thomas continued working. Seemed fine. Seemed to be proving his point. Some of the younger watchers began to think maybe Thomas was right. Maybe the spirits were just stories. Then Thomas stood up in his boat. Suddenly, as if startled, he seemed to be looking at something in the water. Something the shore observers couldn't see. He reached toward it, leaned over the side of his boat. Too far. The boat tilted. Thomas fell into the water. The watchers expected him to surface immediately. Thomas was a strong swimmer. The water there was not deep. He should have been able to stand to climb back into his boat easily. But he didn't surface. The boat rocked as if something underneath was bumping it, creating waves, creating disturbance. Several fishermen grabbed their boats, attempted to launch to rescue Thomas. But their boats wouldn't move, wouldn't push into the water. It was as if the river itself was resisting them, holding their boats on shore, preventing interference. They stood helplessly as Thomas's boat drifted, as the water where he had fallen remained disturbed but empty, as minutes passed with no sign of him, as the sun finished setting and darkness fell. Only then were the would-be rescuers able to push their boats into the water. Only then did the river allow them to approach the area where Thomas had fallen. They found his boat, floating upright, his net still in it, his gear untouched. But no Thomas. They searched, called his name, felt in the water with poles, dove underwater with torches. Nothing. Thomas was gone. Completely. As if the river had swallowed him. His body was found 3 weeks later, miles downstream, caught in roots of a tree that grew from the riverbank. The body was remarkably well preserved. not decomposed as it should have been after 3 weeks in warm water. But the expression on Thomas's face was terrible. Eyes wide, mouth open, face frozen in expression of absolute terror, as if he had seen something in those final moments that was beyond human comprehension. The community retrieved the body, performed proper burial rites, made extensive offerings to the spirits, apologized on Thomas's behalf, requested peace, requested that his troubled spirit be allowed to rest. The incident reinforced the sunset rule. No one questioned it for years afterward. Thomas's story became cautionary tale told to every child, became proof that the rules existed for reason. But people forget, or new people come who don't know the stories, or someone decides they are exception, and violations happen again. The drowning of the brothers. Another story concerns 3 brothers, Michael, James, and Simon. They fished together, shared a boat, worked as unit, were successful fishermen, fed their families well, were respected in community. One evening they were fishing productive spot. The fish were biting well. Their nets were filling rapidly. This was unusually good catch, the kind that could provide income for weeks if they could secure it all. But the sun was descending. Time to head home was approaching. The brothers discussed. They could leave now with good catch, or they could stay slightly longer, fill their boat completely, maximize this unusual opportunity. Michael argued for leaving. James and Simon argued for staying. Just 15 more minutes. Just until the boat was completely full. Then they would head in. Michael was outvoted. Against his better judgment, he agreed to stay. Just 15 minutes. They would watch the sun carefully. Would leave in plenty of time. But 15 minutes became 20. Then 25. The fish kept biting. The nets kept filling. Each time they said, "This is the last cast," they decided on one more. Just one more. The catch was too good to abandon. The sun touched the horizon. They were still on the water. Now they hurried, pulled in nets hastily, began rowing toward shore. But they were far out. The productive fishing spot was in middle of the river. The journey to shore would take at least 15 minutes of steady rowing. They rowed. Hard. Fast. Michael rowing on one side, James on the other, Simon in the stern, steering. They said nothing. All understood the danger. All focused on reaching shore. They were halfway to shore when the water around their boat began to change. Became unusually still. The current stopped pushing their boat. The river surface became mirror smooth. Too smooth. Unnaturally smooth. The brothers rowed harder. But the boat seemed to slow. Seemed to resist movement. As if rowing through syrup rather than water. Then the glowing started. Beneath the boat. Faint at first. Like bioluminescent organisms. But growing brighter. And moving. Circling the boat. Creating patterns in the water. The brothers could see shapes in the glow. Humanoid shapes. Moving around and beneath them. Swimming. But not swimming like humans swim. Swimming like fish swim. Undulating. Moving too fast. moving in ways human bodies shouldn't be able to move. Michael stopped rowing, stared into the water. The glowing figures were beautiful, mesmerizing. They seemed to be beckoning, calling without sound, inviting him to join them. Michael began to stand, began to reach toward the water. James grabbed him, pulled him back down, shook him, yelled his name. Michael blinked, shook his head, seemed to wake from trance. They resumed rowing. But Simon had been affected too. He was leaning over the stern, hand extended toward the water, toward one of the glowing figures that had surfaced partially. James and Michael both grabbed Simon, pulled him into the center of the boat, held him. Simon struggled, spoke in language they didn't recognize, tried to break free, tried to return to the water. The brothers held Simon, continued rowing while restraining their brother. The shore was close now. Just a few more minutes. The glowing beneath them intensified. The shapes multiplied. The water around the boat began to swirl, creating vortex, creating pull that made rowing nearly impossible. Then voices, multiple voices, calling their names, their mother's voice, their father's voice, friends' voices, all calling from the water, all begging them to come, to jump in, to join. The voices were perfectly replicated, exactly like the people they claimed to be. Impossible to distinguish from real voices except that the people being imitated were on shore, were not in the water, could not be speaking from beneath the surface. Michael and James resisted, refused to answer, refused to look directly at the sources of the voices, kept rowing, kept holding Simon, who was still struggling. They reached shallow water, touched bottom, jumped out, began pulling the boat onto shore. Other fishermen ran to help, grabbed the boat, grabbed Simon, who was still trying to return to the water. Together they pulled everything onto land, held Simon until he stopped struggling, until the trance broke, until he became himself again. All three brothers collapsed on shore, shaking, crying, traumatized. Their boat was full of fish. The catch was excellent, but they gave it all away, distributed it to the community, refused to profit from it, made extensive offerings to the spirits, thanked ancestors for protection, apologized for the violation. Simon was never the same afterward. He stopped fishing, stopped going near the river. Even being near the water caused panic attacks, caused the trance-like state to return partially. He would stare at the water with longing, would try to walk toward it, had to be watched constantly by family members. Eventually he moved to the capital, to Harare, far from any river. Needed that distance to recover, to function normally, to stop being called by the voices that had nearly claimed him. Michael and James continued fishing, but they were fanatically careful about the sunset rule afterward. They began heading to shore earlier than necessary, gave themselves excessive safety margin, were terrified of ever being on the water when the sun touched the horizon again. They told their story repeatedly, warning others, explaining that the spirits were real, that the danger was not myth. that survival required absolute adherence to the rules. The woman who wanted to watch. Not all who violate the rules are fishermen. Sometimes violations happen out of ignorance, out of curiosity, out of not understanding the seriousness. These violations can be just as dangerous. Sometimes more so because the violator is not equipped with fisherman's knowledge, not trained in protocols, not prepared for what might happen. A woman named Ruth came to the river at sunset. She was not from the fishing community. She was from the city, had come to visit relatives, had never spent significant time near the river. She found it beautiful, found the sunset over the water particularly beautiful, wanted to photograph it, wanted to capture the moment when the sun touched the water and the sky turned gold and orange. Her relatives warned her, told her to photograph from distance, to stay away from the water's edge at sunset, to come back tomorrow and photograph in safer daylight. But Ruth dismissed their warnings, called them superstitious, insisted that sunset photography required being close to the water, required being at water's edge to get the reflections, the angles, the perfect shot. She went to the river, stood at the edge, set up her camera, waited for the perfect moment. The sun descended. The light was perfect. She began photographing. Click, 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 capturing the golden light on water, the reflections, the beauty. Then she saw something in the water, something moving just beneath the surface. It was beautiful, graceful. It created ripples that caught the light. She pointed her camera at it, zoomed in, tried to see what it was. Through the viewfinder, she could see more clearly. It was humanoid, female, with long dark hair floating in the water, skin that seemed to shimmer, features that were simultaneously beautiful and wrong, too perfect, too symmetrical, too otherworldly. The figure was looking directly at Ruth, directly into the camera lens, making eye contact through the viewfinder. Ruth lowered the camera. The figure was closer now, just below the surface, still looking at her. Ruth stepped back, but her feet didn't want to move. Felt rooted, felt heavy. The figure smiled, mouth moving underwater, showing teeth, too many teeth, teeth that were too sharp. Hands emerged from the water, reaching, beckoning, inviting Ruth to join, to come into the water, to be part of the beauty, to be part of the river, to belong to the spirits. Ruth tried to scream, could not, tried to run, could not. She was frozen, paralyzed by the gaze, by the connection created through eye contact, by her own violation of the rules she had dismissed as superstition. The figure began to rise from the water, no longer staying beneath the surface, beginning to emerge, beginning to manifest more fully. Then someone grabbed Ruth, roughly. Her cousin David. He had been worried about her, had followed her to the river, had arrived just as the figure began emerging. He grabbed Ruth, turned her away from the water, forced her to break eye contact with the figure, dragged her away from the edge. Ruth fought him, tried to turn back, tried to return to the water, tried to see the figure again. But David was strong. He pulled her away, pulled her back from the bank, back to safe distance. Other relatives arrived, helped hold Ruth, helped keep her away from the water as the sun completed its setting. Ruth stopped struggling only when full darkness had fallen, only when the danger had passed its peak. She collapsed, crying, shaking, not understanding fully what had happened, not wanting to understand, just knowing that she had been terrified, that something had tried to take her, that she had barely escaped. Ruth left the next day, returned to the city immediately, never came back to the river, never spoke of what she had seen. Her photographs from that evening, dozens of images captured before the incident, were all corrupted. Blank. Black. Nothing. As if the camera had never taken any images at all. As if the river had claimed the photographs to prevent any evidence of what had been there, of what she had seen, of what had nearly taken her. The fisherman who thought he was protected. Some violations happen because of misplaced confidence, because someone believes they have special protection, special relationship with the spirits, special ability to navigate the danger. These violations are particularly tragic because they involve people who should know better, who understand the rules but believe they are exceptions. A man named Joseph was spirit medium. He communicated with ancestral spirits, guided the community in spiritual matters, performed rituals, made offerings, mediated between the living and the dead. He had genuine spiritual power, genuine connection, genuine ability to see and interact with spiritual forces that ordinary people could not. Joseph believed this spiritual authority extended to the river spirits, believed that because he could communicate with ancestral spirits on land, he could communicate with Njuzu, could negotiate with them, could operate under different rules than ordinary fishermen. He announced he would fish at night, not carelessly, not disrespectfully, but as spiritual practice, as ceremony, as way to commune with the river spirits directly, to strengthen the community's relationship with them, to learn from them, to bring back knowledge and blessings. The elders were uncertain. Joseph had authority, had proven spiritual power. Perhaps he could do what others could not. Perhaps his protection was genuine. Perhaps this was necessary spiritual work. They gave cautious permission, requested extensive preparations, extensive protective rituals, extensive offerings before the attempt. Joseph prepared, fasted for 3 days, performed cleansing ceremonies, made offerings more extensive than anyone had made in living memory, consulted with ancestors through trance, received what he interpreted as permission, as protection, as blessing for his journey into the night river. He launched his boat at sunset, deliberately, ceremonially, paddled into the river as darkness fell. Other community members watched from shore, anxious but respectful, trusting in Joseph's spiritual authority, hoping he would succeed, would return with knowledge, would establish new relationship with the river spirits. For the first hour, Joseph was visible. He floated in the middle of the river, appeared to be meditating, not fishing, just being present. The community watched, maintained vigil, sent prayers and protective thoughts. Then Joseph began to paddle, not toward shore, toward the deepest part of the river, toward the channel where the current was strongest, where the water was darkest. The watchers called to him, begged him to return, but Joseph either did not hear or chose not to respond. He paddled to the deep channel, then stopped, stood up in his boat. This was dangerous even in daytime, extremely dangerous at night. He raised his arms, seemed to be calling to something, speaking words that did not carry to shore, invoking, summoning. The water around his boat began to glow, began to swirl. Shapes emerged, multiple shapes, surrounding his boat, not attacking, just surrounding, observing. Joseph spoke to them, gestured, appeared to be conducting ceremony, appeared to be communicating. Then something changed. One of the shapes moved closer, reached toward Joseph. Joseph reached back, touched it, made contact. The glow intensified, spread from the shape to Joseph himself. He began to glow with the same light as the spirits, began to shine in the darkness. The watchers on shore were awed, terrified but awed. Joseph was doing it, was making contact, was communing with the spirits, was achieving what no one else had achieved. Perhaps he truly was protected. Perhaps he truly had authority that extended to the river spirits. Joseph spoke more urgently, gestured more dramatically, seemed to be in deep conversation with the spirits. The glow continued. The shapes continued their circling. Time passed. An hour. 2 hours. Still Joseph remained on the water. Still he glowed. Still he communed. Then suddenly the glow vanished. All at once. Complete darkness. No shapes visible. No light. Just dark river and dark sky. The watchers strained to see, to find Joseph's boat, to know what had happened. They saw the boat, drifting, empty. Joseph was gone, vanished as completely as Thomas had vanished, as if the river had swallowed him. Rescue attempts were mounted immediately. Many boats launched, searching, calling, but finding nothing. Joseph had disappeared into the river, into the spirit's realm. Despite his preparations, despite his protection, despite his spiritual authority, the night river had claimed him anyway. His body was never found. Not 3 days later. Not 3 weeks later. Never. He had not simply drowned. He had been taken, claimed by the spirits he had tried to commune with, taken into their realm completely. His boat was recovered, floating undamaged downstream. But Joseph himself was gone, had crossed a boundary he could not uncross, had entered a realm he could not return from. The community mourned, made extensive offerings, tried to communicate with Joseph's spirit, but received no response. Whatever had happened to him, whatever realm he had entered, he could not or would not communicate from there. His disappearance stood as warning that even spiritual authority had limits, that even spirit mediums must respect certain boundaries, that the night river answered to no human authority, respected no human power, claimed even those who believed themselves protected. What the spirits want. Understanding why the spirits enforce the sunset boundary requires understanding what they want, what they need, what they protect. The spirits are not arbitrary, are not capricious, are not simply cruel. They have reasons, have needs, have purposes that the living must respect even when not fully understanding. The night river is the spirit's time to move freely, to exist without human presence, to conduct their own activities, to maintain their own society. The spirits have lives, if that word can be used for beings that are not technically alive, have relationships, have hierarchies, have purposes, have work to do that requires the river to themselves. During the day, they accommodate human presence. They retreat. They minimize their activity. They allow the living to use the river for practical purposes. This is not just generosity, is part of ancient agreement, part of balance between worlds. The living need the river for survival. The spirits acknowledge this. Allow daytime use in exchange for certain offerings and certain respect. But at night, the river returns to spirit control, becomes spirit territory, becomes place where they can exist fully, can manifest without hiding, can conduct their activities without human interference. This is their right, their time, their space. Humans who violate this boundary are not just being rude, are disrupting spirit activity, are interfering with spirit society, are committing offense that demands response. The spirits also protect something, the river itself, its ecosystem, its sacred nature. Human presence, even respectful presence, is disrupting, creates pollution, not just physical pollution though that is problem, but spiritual pollution, human emotion, human desire, human fear, human energy. All of this affects the spiritual environment, makes it harder for spirits to maintain their domain, makes it harder for them to exist as they need to exist. Night is when the river cleanses itself, when spiritual pollution from day dissipates, when the balance restores, when the river remembers itself, becomes fully what it is rather than what humans use it for. This cleansing requires absence of human presence, requires the spirits to have the river to themselves, requires the night boundary to be maintained. Additionally, the spirits protect the fish, the river life, the ecosystem. At night, fish spawn, migrate, feed, conduct activities that require safety from human predation. The spirits enforce this, create sanctuary time. This is not just about fish populations for next day's fishing, though it is partly about that. It is about recognizing that the river is home to more than humans, that other beings have rights, have needs, have lives that matter. The spirits also protect humans from themselves. This is paradoxical aspect. The spirits who punish boundary violations are simultaneously protecting humans from worse dangers. The night river contains things that should not be seen by living eyes, forces that would damage human minds, beings that would corrupt human spirits, realities that human consciousness is not equipped to process. When spirits attack violators, they are sometimes preventing those violators from encountering even worse things, from going too deep into spirit realm, from seeing things that would destroy their sanity or their souls. The attack that seems like punishment is sometimes mercy, sometimes prevention of worse fate. The drowning spirits, those who died and were never recovered, are particularly dangerous in this way. They have lost their humanity, have become something else. Something hungry. Something broken. They actively seek to pull the living into the water, to create more of themselves, to have company in their endless waiting. The enforcement spirits, the Njuzu, the ancestral spirits who maintain boundaries, stop this from happening by keeping the living away, by enforcing curfew that prevents interaction with drowning spirits. Finally, the spirits maintain mystery. Maintain the veil between worlds. Maintain separation that is necessary for both sides. Complete integration would be destructive, would collapse the boundaries that allow both living and spirits to exist in their proper spheres. The sunset rule maintains this separation, maintains the mystery, maintains the proper relationship between worlds that must touch but not merge, must interact but not collapse into each other. The protections and practices. Living safely beside the Zambezi requires more than knowing the rules. Requires active practices, regular rituals, ongoing relationship maintenance with the spirits. These practices are not just tradition, our survival technology, our accumulated wisdom about how to coexist with spiritual forces that are more powerful than humans but can be negotiated with, respected, appeased. You wake each morning before dawn. This is not just practical fishing schedule, is spiritual practice. You wake in darkness. Perform cleansing. Wash your hands and face with water you have prepared the night before. Water that has been left under the stars, that has absorbed night energy, that cleanses both physically and spiritually. You dress in your fishing clothes. Simple clothes. Nothing new. Nothing flashy. Ostentation offends spirits. Suggests pride. Suggests you believe yourself important. You want to appear humble. Want to appear respectful. Want to appear as someone who understands their place in the larger order. Before leaving your home, you speak to your ancestors. Brief words. Acknowledgement. Request for protection. You mention where you are going, what you plan to do. You ask them to watch over you, to guide you, to intervene if you make mistakes. You pour small amount of water on the ground, or beer if you have it, or maize meal. This is libation. This is offering to those who came before. This is maintaining connection with ancestors who protect you. You walk to the river. In the pre-dawn darkness, this walk requires courage. The path is not lit. The world is still in that liminal space between night and day. Spirits are still active, but you walk confidently, not because you feel no fear, but because showing fear invites attention. You walk as if you have every right to be here, as if you are protected. And in some sense, this confidence itself becomes protection, becomes shield. At the river's edge, you stop. Do not immediately approach the water. Do not immediately touch the boat. First, you make offerings. This is critical moment. This is when you establish relationship for the day. When you ask permission. When you acknowledge that you are guest. You take maize meal from the small pouch you carry. White maize meal, ground fine. You scatter it on the water. Watch it float on the surface. Disperse. Disappear into the river. As you scatter, you speak. Your voice is calm, respectful. You address the spirits by their proper names. You acknowledge their authority over these waters. Nyama Nyami, Great Serpent, Protector of the Zambezi. I come to your waters this morning. I come with respect. I come to feed my family. I take only what I need. I will harm nothing beyond necessity. I will be gone before the sun sets. I ask your blessing. I ask your protection. I ask that you guide the fish to my nets. I offer this meal in acknowledgement of your sovereignty. Sometimes you add specific requests. Mention if family member is ill and you need good catch to pay for medicine. Mention if you have been having bad luck and need intervention. But mostly you keep it simple. Keep it respectful. Keep it focused on acknowledging the spirits rather than demanding from them. You also pour tobacco. Small pinch. Tobacco is favorite offering of river spirits. Some say it creates smoke-like dispersal in water that spirits enjoy. Some say it carries prayers more effectively. Regardless of mechanism, tobacco is traditional, is known to be appreciated, is offering that increases likelihood of favorable response. After offerings, you check your boat, carefully, methodically, looking for any damage, any water inside, any problems that might indicate spiritual interference. Finding such problems is bad omen. Might mean spirits are unhappy. Might mean you should not fish today. Might mean you need to make additional offerings before proceeding. Today the boat is fine. You push it into the water. The resistance you feel is normal physical resistance, not spiritual resistance. The boat slides into the river easily. This is good sign. Means permission is granted. Means the spirits have accepted your offering. Means you can proceed. You paddle out. Slowly. Carefully. Not rushing. You are aware of your surroundings. Watching water. Watching sky. Watching birds. Looking for signs. Everything is communication if you know how to read it. A fish eagle calls. This is good sign. Fish eagles are sacred birds. Are connected to the river spirits. Their call suggests spirits are present but not hostile. Suggests they have noticed you and approved your presence. You reach your usual fishing spot. You cast your nets. The work begins. But even while working, you remain spiritually attentive. Remain aware. You notice how fish are biting. Strong resistance suggests good relationship with spirits. They are guiding fish to your nets. Weak biting might suggest you need to make additional offerings. Might suggest spirits are withholding blessing. Throughout the day, you maintain awareness of time. The sun is your clock. You watch its progress across sky. Calculate constantly how much time remains before you must begin journey back to shore. You give yourself margin. Never wait until last possible moment. Never push the boundary close. This is not just caution. Is respect. Is demonstration that you take the boundary seriously. That you honor it not just in letter but in spirit. That you err on side of safety rather than maximum profit. This attitude matters. The spirits notice. They respond more favorably to those who demonstrate genuine respect than to those who technically follow rules while clearly resenting them. The spirit mediums and their role. You cannot navigate the spiritual complexities of the Zambezi alone. No one can. The community requires specialists. People who have deeper connection with spirits. Who can communicate more directly. Who can interpret signs. Who can mediate when relationships become damaged. who can perform ceremonies that ordinary people cannot perform. These are spirit mediums. Svikiro in Shona, Sihambi in Debali. Various names in various languages but similar role across cultures. Spirit mediums are people who have been chosen by spirits, not through their own desire necessarily, through spiritual calling that cannot be refused, through possession that marks them as intermediaries between worlds. In your community, the primary spirit medium is a woman named Grace. She is elderly now, has been spirit medium for over 40 years. She did not choose this role. The spirits chose her when she was a young woman, came to her in dreams, made her sick with illness no ordinary medicine could cure. Eventually she had to accept the calling, had to undergo initiation, had to learn to allow spirits to possess her, to speak through her, to use her body as vehicle for communication with the living. Grace serves multiple functions. First, she conducts regular ceremonies for the community. Ceremonies that maintain collective relationship with river spirits. These happen at specific times. New moon ceremonies, harvest ceremonies, ceremonies after someone dies, ceremonies when fishing has been poor, ceremonies when the river floods. Each ceremony has specific purpose, specific rituals, specific offerings. During these ceremonies, Grace enters trance. Her consciousness recedes, allows ancestral spirit or river spirit to enter her body, to speak through her. The spirit that possesses her provides guidance, answers questions, gives instructions about what offerings are needed, explains what has been done wrong if relationships are damaged, promises intervention if proper respect is shown. The community gathers for these ceremonies, brings offerings collectively, more elaborate than individual daily offerings. Whole goats sometimes, multiple bags of maize meal, beer, tobacco, cloth, coins. The offerings are substantial because they represent the entire community, represent collective request for blessing, collective acknowledgement of dependence on river and its spirits. Second, Grace interprets dreams. River dreams are common among fishermen, are considered significant, are believed to be communications from spirits. But dream interpretation requires skill, requires understanding symbolic language spirits use, requires distinguishing between ordinary dreams and spiritual communications. You have had such dreams. Recently you dreamed you were fishing and caught fish that was silver and glowing. In the dream, the fish spoke to you, told you to cast your nets on the east side of the river, not the west where you usually fish. The dream felt significant, felt different from normal dreams. But you were uncertain. Was this genuine spiritual communication, or just your subconscious processing daily experiences? You went to Grace, described the dream. She listened carefully, asked specific questions about the fish's appearance, about exact words it spoke, about how you felt during the dream, about what happened when you woke. After hearing full account, she interpreted. The glowing fish was manifestation of Njuzu. The instruction to fish east side was genuine spiritual guidance. The spirits were directing you to better fishing spot, were offering blessing. But Grace added warning. Follow the instruction but increase your offerings for 1 week. Make double offerings each morning. This is because receiving direct spiritual communication creates obligation, creates expectation that you will be grateful, will reciprocate the favor with increased respect and offerings. You followed Grace's interpretation. Fished the east side. Made double offerings. The fishing was exceptional, better than you had experienced in months. This validated Grace's interpretation, validated her role as mediator, reinforced your trust in the spiritual framework she helps maintain. Third, Grace handles spiritual problems. When someone violates rules, when someone offends spirits, when fishing becomes unusually bad for no apparent reason, when someone has troubling experiences on the river, these problems are brought to Grace. She diagnoses, determines what has gone wrong, what offerings are needed, what ceremonies must be performed to repair relationship with spirits. A fisherman named Peter came to Grace with problem. His nets were breaking. Every day. Multiple nets. This was not normal wear. Was too consistent. Too targeted. His nets, while other fishermen's nets were fine. Grace entered trance. Consulted with spirits. Determined that Peter had accidentally fished in forbidden area. Had crossed into territory that belonged specifically to one powerful ancestral spirit who did not permit fishing. The solution was complex. Peter had to make extensive apologies. Had to make large offerings directly at the location where he had offended. Had to promise to avoid that area permanently. Had to perform cleansing ceremony to remove the curse that had been placed on his equipment. Grace facilitated all of this. Conducted the ceremony. Mediated between Peter and the offended spirit. Eventually the net breaking stopped. Peter's fishing returned to normal. But he had learned expensive lesson about respecting boundaries he couldn't see. Fourth, Grace teaches. She passes down knowledge to younger generation. Teaches about the spirits. About proper offerings. About how to read signs. About which areas are forbidden and why. About the history of the community's relationship with the river. About stories of past violations and their consequences. This teaching is informal. Happens through conversations. Through explaining why certain things are done certain ways. Through answering questions when people are confused or uncertain. You have learned much from Grace. More than you learned from your father. More than you learned from any single source. Grace knows things others don't. Sees things others can't. Her knowledge is invaluable. Her role is irreplaceable. When she dies, and she is old now, this day approaches, the community will face crisis. Because while she has apprentices, while she is training others to eventually take her role, spirit mediums cannot be created through training alone. Must be chosen by spirits. Must have the gift. The calling. The capacity to serve as vessel. There is young woman in community, Sarah, who shows signs. Who has prophetic dreams. Who sometimes speaks in trance. Who seems to be developing connection with spirits. Grace is guiding her. Teaching her. Preparing her. But whether Sarah will become full spirit medium, whether the spirits will fully claim her, whether she will be able to serve the community as Grace is served, these questions remain unanswered. The community waits. Hopes. Prays that when Grace passes, someone will be ready to take her place. Because without spirit medium, the community's relationship with the river spirits becomes much more difficult, much more dangerous, much less certain. The annual ceremonies. Beyond daily offerings and regular mediations, there are annual ceremonies. Large community gatherings. Times when relationship with river spirits is renewed formally. These ceremonies are elaborate, require extensive preparation, involve entire community, are crucial to maintaining collective blessing, collective protection, collective permission to use the river. The most important ceremony happens just before rainy season. This is when the river will flood, when its character will change dramatically, when fishing will become dangerous or impossible for months, when the community's relationship with the river must be especially strong because the river itself will become more powerful, more dangerous, more prone to destruction. You participate in preparation for this ceremony. All fishermen do. For weeks beforehand, you set aside portion of each catch as offering. You contribute money to purchase goats for sacrifice. You help gather wood for the ceremonial fire. You help clean the ceremonial area on the riverbank where the event will occur. The ceremony happens at sunset. Deliberately. This is only time when community gathers at river during dangerous hour. But this is exception. This is protected time. This is when grace and other spiritual authorities create safe space. Create temporary suspension of normal rules. Create opportunity for community to be on river's edge at sunset without danger. The entire community gathers. Men, women, children, elders, everyone. You stand together on the riverbank. The ceremonial fire is lit. Grace begins the ceremony. She calls upon the spirits, names them individually, acknowledges their power, thanks them for the past year's blessings, apologizes for any offenses that may have occurred, promises continued respect. Then the offerings begin. The goats are ritually slaughtered. Their blood is poured into the river. This is most powerful offering. Life given to honor life. Blood that carries essence of living creature given to acknowledge dependence on river's life-giving power. The meat is divided. Portion given to the river. Portion cooked and shared among community. This sharing is important. Is demonstration that community receives back from what it offers. That the relationship is reciprocal. That the spirits give as well as receive. Other offerings follow. Maize meal by the sackful. Beer poured in quantities that would be expensive waste if they were not sacred obligation. Tobacco. Cloth. Coins thrown into the water. Each offering is accompanied by prayers. By songs. By drumming. The ceremony builds. Becomes more intense. Becomes more emotionally powerful. Grace enters trance. Multiple times during the ceremony, she allows different spirits to possess her. Each spirit speaks. Each gives guidance for the coming year. Each makes specific requests. Each provides specific blessings. The community listens. Responds. Accepts whatever the spirits command. Promises whatever the spirits request. At climax of ceremony, something happens. The river responds. Always responds. Sometimes dramatically. Sometimes subtly. But always noticeably. You have seen different responses over the years. Once the water glowed. Just for a moment. Bright enough that everyone saw it. Couldn't be explained by any natural phenomenon. Was clear spiritual response. Clear acknowledgement that offerings had been accepted. Another year, fish began jumping. All around the ceremonial area. Dozens of fish. Leaping from the water. As if celebrating. As if acknowledging the ceremony. It continued for several minutes. Then stopped as suddenly as it had started. The community took this as extremely positive sign. As promise of good fishing for coming year. And indeed that year was exceptional. Catches were abundant. No serious accidents occurred. The blessing was real. Was validated by results. This year the response is different. As grace completes the final prayer, a wind rises. Not ordinary wind. Wind that comes from the river itself. That smells of water and fish and something else. Something ancient. Something powerful. The wind circles the gathered community. Touches everyone. Ruffles hair. Moves clothing. Then dissipates. Returns to the river. The community knows this is acknowledgement. Is the Spirit's presence made physical? Is acceptance of the offerings and promises? After the ceremony, people linger. Talking. Eating the ceremonial meat. Sharing beer. But as full darkness falls, everyone moves away from the water's edge. Even on ceremonial day. Even with spiritual protection. The community respects the boundary. By full darkness, everyone is at safe distance. The riverbank is empty. Return to the spirits. The exception has ended. Normal rules resume. The modern challenges. The traditional practices have been maintained for generations. Have worked. Have kept the community safe. Have maintained productive relationship with the river and its spirits. But modern world creates challenges. creates pressures, creates conflicts with traditional wisdom. Education is double-edged. Your children go to school, learn reading, mathematics, science. This is good, necessary for functioning in modern economy. But they also learn skepticism, learn to question traditional beliefs, learn to view spirit beliefs as superstition, as primitive thinking, as obstacle to progress. Your eldest son James is 16, smart, top of his class. He has absorbed modern education's worldview. When you tell him stories about the river spirits, he rolls his eyes. When you insist he follow the sunset rule, he argues. Says there is no scientific evidence for spirits. Says the dangers are natural, crocodiles, hippos drowning in darkness, not supernatural. Says that with modern flashlights and motors, night fishing would be perfectly safe, would increase family income, would allow him to save for university. You try to explain, try to make him understand that some knowledge is not scientific, that some realities are not measurable by instruments, that generations of experience with the river count for something. But your arguments sound weak even to yourself, sound like you are defending superstition, like you are trapped in old ways, like you fear progress. But you also know you are right. Know that the spirits are real. Know that the dangers are not just natural. Know that night fishing would end in tragedy. But how do you prove this to someone who demands scientific evidence? How do you validate spiritual knowledge in framework that rejects spirituality as knowledge category? Christianity also creates complications. Many in the community have converted, attend churches, have been taught that traditional spirit beliefs are demonic, that offerings to ancestors are idolatry, that Grace's spirit possession is satanic, that the entire spiritual framework is sin. Yet these same Christians still follow the river rules, still make offerings, though they might deny it or reframe it as cultural practice rather than spiritual practice, still fear the sunset boundary, still avoid the forbidden areas, because experience contradicts doctrine, because the river's power is evident regardless of theology, because spiritual realities persist even when religious frameworks attempt to eliminate them. You navigate this contradiction. You attend church, identify as Christian, but you also maintain traditional practices. You see no conflict. God created the river. God created the spirits that inhabit it. Respecting those spirits is respecting God's creation. Making offerings is acknowledging God's sovereignty through acknowledging the powers He created. The pastor disagrees. But the pastor is not from this community, does not fish the Zambezi, does not have generations of ancestors who learned these truths. His theology is abstract. Yours is practical, lived, validated by survival. Economic pressure is perhaps most difficult challenge. Modern economy demands more production, more income, more participation in cash economy. The traditional relationship with the river, taking only what you need, respecting the sunset boundary, observing forbidden areas, limits income, limits how much fish you can catch, how much money you can make. Fishing companies offer contracts. We'll buy all the fish you can provide. We'll pay better prices if you deliver large quantities. But meeting those quantities requires fishing longer, fishing more aggressively, maybe fishing at night with lights, maybe using more destructive techniques, maybe ignoring traditional restrictions. The temptation is real. Your family needs money. Your children need school fees. Your wife needs medical care. Your home needs repairs. The fish are there. The market exists. You could double or triple your income if you abandon traditional restrictions. If you stopped making offerings that cost money. If you stopped wasting time on ceremonies. If you fished when fishing is good rather than when tradition allows. But you know the cost. Have heard too many stories. Have seen too many consequences. Have felt the spiritual realities too directly to dismiss them. So you maintain the traditional practices. Accept lower income. Struggle financially. But remain safe spiritually. Remain right with the river. Remain protected. Not everyone makes this choice. Some fishermen abandon traditional practices. Pursue maximum profit. Fish at night. Ignore forbidden areas. Stop making offerings. Some survive. This is confusing. Makes traditional warnings seem false. Makes those who maintain practices seem foolish. But others don't survive. Have accidents. Disappear. Experience misfortunes that spiral. Some return to traditional practices after suffering enough. Others are claimed completely. The pattern is clear to those who watch carefully. Who remember. Who track causes and effects over years rather than days. Tourism also complicates. Tourists come to see Victoria Falls. Come to experience the Zambezi. Come to fish for tiger fish. Come with different expectations. Different assumptions. No connection to local spiritual understanding. They want to fish at night. Want to photograph sunset from boats. Want to swim in the river. Want to use the river as recreational space. Local guides struggle with this. Cannot explain the spiritual dangers in ways tourists will understand. Cannot admit that the sunset rule is spiritual rather than just practical. Cannot say the river spirits will take you to people who will laugh. So they cite natural dangers. Crocodiles. Hippos. Strong currents in darkness. These are real dangers too. But they are not the primary dangers. They are not what locals actually fear. Sometimes tourists die. Drown mysteriously. Disappear. Are attacked by animals in improbable ways. The local community understands. Knows the tourists violated boundaries. Knows the spirits responded. But this understanding cannot be stated publicly. Cannot be part of official explanation. The deaths are attributed to natural causes. To accidents. To underestimating nature's dangers. The spiritual dimension remains hidden. Remains knowledge of those who know. Who understand. Who remember. The adaptations and continuity. Despite modern challenges, traditional practices persist. Adapt. Find ways to continue in changed context. This adaptability is itself traditional. Has always been necessary. The river changes. Society changes. Economy changes. But core spiritual truths remain. Core relationship with the river remains. Core need for proper relationship with spirits remains. Grace has begun using cell phones in her practice. When someone has spiritual question, they call her. She provides guidance over phone. This seems contradictory. Ancient spiritual practice using modern technology. But it works. The spirits do not reject technology. Do not require that relationship be maintained only through face-to-face interaction. What matters is the relationship itself. The respect. The recognition of spiritual reality. The medium of communication is flexible. Offerings have adapted too. Traditional offerings of goats and chickens are expensive now. Hard for poor families to provide. So substitutes have emerged. Become acceptable. Money can represent what livestock represented. Cornmeal can be bought in small quantities rather than grown. Tobacco can be industrial rather than hand-grown. The spirits accept this. What matters is intention, is acknowledgement, is the active offering rather than specific form of what is offered. The sunset rule remains absolute, has not adapted. This is non-negotiable. But how it is maintained has become more complex. Fishermen with motors can fish further from shore, can delay their departure slightly because return journey is faster. This is not abandonment of the rule, is adaptation to new technology while maintaining the essential boundary. Some fishermen have begun using GPS and phones to track exact sunset time, to know precisely when they must be off the water. This too is adaptation, using modern tools to maintain traditional boundary more precisely. Grace has blessed this practice, has said the spirits approve of technology used to honor boundaries rather than violate them. Ceremonies continue. The annual ceremony happens every year. Sometimes more people attend, sometimes fewer, but it happens, is maintained. The young people might understand it less, might participate more from social pressure than spiritual conviction. But they participate, and participation itself maintains the tradition, maintains the relationship, keeps the knowledge alive even when full understanding is partial. You teach your children the traditional ways, even when they argue, even when they seem not to listen, even when they call it superstition. You teach because it is your obligation, because the knowledge must be passed forward, because you hope that even if they reject it now, they will remember it later, will return to it when they experience what you have experienced, will understand eventually what cannot be understood purely through argument or evidence. You take James fishing, show him the river, show him how to read it, show him where to fish and where not to fish, show him how to make offerings even though he thinks it is meaningless. You do not argue, do not try to convince, just demonstrate, just model, just maintain the practice and hope that its value will become evident to him in time. On the water, you notice James watching the sunset, calculating time. Despite his skepticism, he is anxious, wants to make sure you leave in time. This is telling. He may not believe in the spirits intellectually, but viscerally, emotionally, somewhere deep in his consciousness formed by growing up in this community, hearing these stories, seeing others maintain these boundaries, he believes, or at least he fears. And fear born of cultural knowledge is itself a kind of belief, is itself a kind of wisdom that may deepen as he ages. You have fished the Zambezi for 20 years. 20 years of daily contact with the river. 20 years of making offerings. 20 years of respecting boundaries. 20 years of following rules. In that time you have had your own encounters, your own experiences that confirmed what the stories taught, that validated the warnings, that proved the spirits are real. The first encounter happened when you were young fishermen, newly married, eager to prove yourself, eager to provide well for your wife. You were fishing alone, unusual but not forbidden. The day was productive. Your nets were filling. The fish were biting well. Time passed quickly. Too quickly. You looked up and realized the sun was lower than you had thought. Much lower. You had been so focused on the excellent catch that you had not been monitoring time properly. Now you were far from shore. The sun was perhaps 20 minutes from touching the horizon. You would need to paddle hard. Very hard. Might not make it in time. You immediately pulled in your nets. Secured your catch hastily. Began paddling. Your arms burned. Your breath came hard. You were moving as fast as you could. But you were so far out. The shore seemed impossibly distant. The sun continued its descent. Steady. Relentless. Indifferent to your panic. 15 minutes to sunset. Still far from shore. You paddled harder. Prayed. Not organized prayer. Just desperate words. Please. Please let me make it. Please. You were not even sure who you were praying to. God. Ancestors. The river spirits themselves. Anyone who might help. 10 minutes to sunset. You were closer but still not close enough. Your arms were exhausted. Your shoulders screamed. Your back ached. But you kept paddling. What choice did you have? Stopping meant certain danger. Only option was to continue. To push your body beyond what you thought possible. To hope your strength would last. 5 minutes to sunset. You were in shallower water now. Could see the shore clearly. Could see people on the bank. Could see other fishermen watching you. Knowing you were in danger. Unable to help. Just watching. Hoping you would make it. Then something changed. The water became easier to paddle. The resistance lessened. Your boat seemed to accelerate. You were not paddling harder. If anything, your exhaustion meant you were paddling less powerfully. But the boat was moving faster. Much faster. As if something was pushing you. Helping you. Guiding you toward shore. 3 minutes to sunset. Your boat scraped bottom. You jumped out into shallow water. Pulled the boat onto shore. Completely onto shore. Just as the sun's lower edge touched the horizon. Just as the transformation began. You had made it. Barely. Impossibly. But you had made it. You collapsed on the shore. Breathing hard. Trembling. Other fishermen came to you. Helped you secure your boat. Helped you calm down. No one said much. Everyone understood. You had broken the rule through carelessness. Had nearly paid for it. Had been saved by what? By your own strength? By luck? By something else? That night you had a dream. You were back on the water. But it was night. The river was glowing. And beneath your boat you could see shapes. Large shapes. Moving. They were beneath you during that desperate paddle. Were watching you. Were the ones who had pushed your boat. Had helped you. Had saved you. But why? Why would they help? You were violating their time. Were trespassing. Should have been punished, not helped. In the dream, one of the shapes rose slightly. Close enough to the surface that you could see more clearly. It was Njuzu. Female. Beautiful. Terrifying. She looked at you. Spoke without words. Just direct communication into your mind. Once, she said. Once we help. Because you have always been respectful. Because your offerings have been genuine. Because you did not violate intentionally. But only once. Next time there will be no help. Next time the boundary will be enforced. Remember this mercy. Respect what it teaches. You woke sweating. The dream felt different from normal dreams. Felt real. Felt like actual communication. You went to Grace the next day. Told her everything. She listened. Interpreted. Confirmed that you had been helped by the spirits. That they had shown mercy. But she emphasized the warning. That mercy was one time. That you must never again be careless about sunset time. That the spirits had given you second chance but would not give third. From that day forward you have been fanatically careful about time. Leave earlier than necessary. Give yourself excessive margin. Never again want to be in position of desperately racing the sun. Never again want to test whether the spirits will help. That one-time mercy was gift. Was teaching moment. Was opportunity to learn without dying. You learned. You remember. You are grateful. The signs of spirit presence. You have learned to recognize when spirits are particularly active, when their presence is stronger, when danger is elevated. These signs are subtle, require attention, require experience, require understanding what normal looks and feels like so you can recognize when things are not normal. The water itself changes when spirits are present, becomes somehow different. The difference is hard to describe to someone who has not experienced it. The water looks the same, moves the same, feels the same physically, but energetically, spiritually it is different. Heavier somehow, more attentive, more aware. You feel this awareness. Feel watched. Feel observed. Not threatening necessarily. Just present. Just conscious. The river is always alive to some degree. But sometimes it is more alive. More actively aware. During those times you are extra careful. Extra respectful. Make additional offerings. Reduce your fishing time. Give the spirits more space. Fish behavior also indicates spirit presence. When fish become unusually active or unusually inactive without obvious environmental cause, spirits are likely influencing them. Fish jumping in synchronized patterns. Fish schooling in unusual formations. Fish avoiding certain areas completely despite suitable conditions. All of these can be spirit manifestations. Spirits using fish as medium for communication or display. You were once fishing near a sandbank when all the fish suddenly departed. All at once. A productive area that had been full of fish became completely empty within minutes. You looked around, saw nothing unusual, but felt something. Felt presence. Felt warning. You pulled in your nets immediately. Began paddling away from the area. As you left, you looked back. The water where you had been fishing began to swirl. Create vortex. Not from wind, there was no wind. Not from current, the current there was normally gentle. From something underneath. Something large. Something powerful. Something that had cleared the area of fish. Something that would have been directly beneath you had you remained. You never fished that area again. Marked it mentally as dangerous. As place where spirits were particularly active. Later you learned that a fisherman had drowned there 10 years earlier. His body had been recovered, but his spirit remained restless. Remained territorial. That was what had been underneath you. That was what had warned you away through the fish behavior. You had recognized the warning. Had responded appropriately. Had survived. Birds also signal spirit presence. Especially fish eagles. When fish eagles behave unusually, calling at wrong times, circling specific areas, refusing to hunt in places they normally hunt, spirits are often involved. Fish eagles are sacred birds. Are connected to the river's spiritual ecology. They perceive spirits more readily than humans do. Their behavior reflects what they see in spiritual dimensions humans cannot perceive directly. The air changes too. temperature shifts that have no environmental explanation. Cold spots on hot days. Warm spots on cool days. Changes in humidity or pressure that feel wrong. These are spirits moving through physical space. Are their presence manifesting in ways that affect physical conditions? When you feel such changes, you increase alertness. Increase respect. Acknowledge the presence verbally if you are alone. Let the spirits know you recognize them, that you defer to them. Sounds carry warnings, not just voices, though voices calling from water are most obvious spirit manifestation. But other sounds, splashing that has no visible cause, ripples that move against wind, drumming sounds from underwater, singing that seems to come from everywhere and nowhere, whispers that you cannot quite hear clearly but know are there. These sounds require discipline, require you to hear them without responding, to acknowledge them internally without engaging, to note them as information about spirit presence without allowing them to lure you. This is difficult. Human instinct is to investigate unusual sounds, to determine their source, to respond if they seem directed at you. But on the river, this instinct must be suppressed, must be overridden by cultural knowledge that says some sounds should be noted but not investigated. Your body also signals spirit presence. Hairs rising on your arms or neck, sudden cold, sudden heat, pressure on your chest, difficulty breathing, dizziness, disorientation. These physical responses are not medical, are spiritual. Are your body responding to spiritual presence in ways your conscious mind might not immediately recognize? When these physical responses occur, you stop what you are doing. Assess the situation. Look around carefully. Check the sun's position. Make offerings if you have not already done so today. Speak respectfully to any spirits that might be present. Acknowledge them. Reaffirm your respect. Often this is enough. The physical symptoms ease. The pressure lifts. The spirits have communicated their presence. You have acknowledged. The interaction is complete. But sometimes the symptoms intensify. Sometimes the pressure increases. Sometimes you feel pushed, directed, compelled to move in certain direction or away from certain area. When this happens, you obey immediately. Do not question. Do not analyze. Just obey. The spirits are communicating urgently, are warning you or directing you for your own protection. To ignore such clear communication would be foolish, would be dangerous, would be showing disrespect that could have severe consequences. Dreams too are communication channel. Not all dreams, but certain dreams. Dreams about the river. Dreams where spirits appear. Dreams that feel different, more vivid, more real, more memorable. Dreams that carry emotional intensity that normal dreams lack. These are messages, are communications that bypass waking consciousness and speak directly to deeper awareness. You pay attention to these dreams. Record them mentally. Share them with Grace when they seem particularly significant. She interprets, determines what the spirits are saying, what they want, what warnings or blessings they are providing. Following the guidance from these dreams has kept you safe multiple times, has led you to good fishing, has warned you away from danger, has maintained your relationship with the spirits in good standing. The hierarchy of spirits. Not all spirits are equal. There is hierarchy. There is order. Understanding this hierarchy helps you navigate the spiritual ecology of the river, helps you know who to address in offerings, helps you understand the different types of presences you might encounter, helps you respond appropriately to different spiritual situations. At the top is Nyamanyami, the river god, the great serpent, the ultimate authority. Nyamanyami is distant, ancient, powerful beyond human comprehension. You do not interact with Nyamanyami directly. Cannot. The gap between human and river god is too vast. But you acknowledge Nyamanyami in every offering. Always name him first. Always recognize his supreme authority. Always defer to his power. Nyamanyami's presence is felt in major river events, in the annual flooding, in great droughts, in catastrophes, in blessings that affect entire regions. Nyamanyami acts at large scale, deals with collective rather than individual, maintains the river's overall balance, ensures the ecosystem functions, provides for all the peoples, human and non-human, who depend on the Zambezi. When Nyamanyami is displeased, entire communities suffer. Floods come at wrong times. Droughts persist. Fish disappear. Crops fail. Diseases spread. The displeasure is not targeted at individuals but at collective violations, at communities that have allowed disrespect to become widespread, that have abandoned traditional practices, that have damaged the river or violated sacred areas. The annual ceremony is primarily for Nyamanyami, is community-level offering to maintain relationship with the river god, to acknowledge dependence, to request continued blessing, to apologize for any collective offenses. The ceremony's importance cannot be overstated, is what keeps the entire community in right relationship with the river's supreme power. Below Nyamanyami are the Njuzu, the water spirits. These are more numerous, more varied, more directly interactive with humans. Njuzu are not gods, but they are powerful, are ancient, have individual personalities, have preferences, have territories within the larger river system. Some Njuzu are benevolent, guide fishermen, help those who respect them, bless families who honor them properly. These are the Njuzu you hope to encounter, the ones whose territories you fish in gratefully, the ones you thank in your offerings. Some Njuzu are neutral, care neither for nor against humans, simply enforce boundaries, simply protect their territories, simply maintain the order. These Njuzu you respect. Do not try to cultivate relationship with. Just acknowledge and avoid offending. Some Njuzu are malevolent, were twisted by their own histories, by tragedies that affected them, by nature that tends toward hostility. These Njuzu actively threaten humans. These are the ones who drown people, who call names, who create dangers, who enforce rules with maximum severity. These Njuzu you avoid completely. Their territories are the forbidden areas, places where no amount of respect or offering will make you safe. Below the Njuzu are ancestral spirits. These are spirits of dead humans who maintain connection to the river. Your grandfather is among these, is present in the river's spiritual ecology, watches over you, guides you when he can, protects you when the more powerful spirits allow. Ancestral spirits are most personal level of spiritual interaction. You can appeal to them directly, can ask for specific help, can thank them for specific blessings. They understand human concerns because they were human. They care about family because they are family. They bridge the gap between living and the more alien spiritual forces. But ancestral spirits are also lowest in hierarchy, cannot overrule Njuzu, cannot prevent what higher spirits decree, can only protect and guide within limits set by greater powers. So while you trust your grandfather's spirit to watch over you, you do not assume his protection is absolute. Do not take risks thinking he will save you. He will help when he can. But he cannot contradict the sunset rule, cannot prevent consequences of major violations, can only mitigate, only guide, only intercede within his limited authority. Below even ancestral spirits are the troubled dead, the drowning spirits, the ones who were never recovered, never properly buried, never released to ancestral realm. These are not part of healthy spiritual hierarchy, are aberrations, are problems in the system, are dangerous precisely because they are incomplete, are trapped between states, are hungry for completion they can never achieve. These spirits you avoid completely. Do not try to help them. That is work for spirit mediums with proper protection. Do not respond to them. That gives them opening to attach to you. Do not pity them. They will use pity to draw you in. Just avoid. Just protect yourself. Just maintain boundaries that keep them at distance. Understanding this hierarchy helps you navigate spiritual dangers. When you make offerings, you address them in order. Nyama first. Juzu second. Ancestors third. You do not address troubled spirits. They should not be acknowledged or encouraged. This order shows respect. Shows you understand proper relationships. Shows you are educated in spiritual matters. The spirits notice. Respond more favorably to those who demonstrate proper understanding. The claiming. What happens when spirits take someone? You have heard many stories about people who were taken by the river, who were claimed by the spirits. But what does this actually mean? What happens to those who are claimed? Where do they go? What becomes of them? The truth is complex. Not all claims are the same. Not all taken people meet the same fate. The spirits have different reasons for taking people, have different purposes, create different outcomes. Some claims are punishment, pure and simple. Someone violated rules severely, showed extreme disrespect, endangered the spiritual ecology, caused offense that demanded response. These people are taken and destroyed. Their spirits are not gentle claimed or incorporated into the river's spiritual community. They are consumed, erased. Their continued existence would be problematic, so it is ended. Completely. Permanently. These deaths are the merciful ones, though they do not seem merciful. The claimed person drowns, dies relatively quickly. Their family finds the body eventually, can perform burial rites, can help the spirit move on to ancestral realm. The person suffers death and is gone. Terrible, tragic, but final. Other claims are different. Are taking someone into spirit realm. Are transformation from living human to something else. These are the ones who disappear completely, whose bodies are never found, who seem to have crossed completely out of human existence into spiritual existence. No one knows exactly what happens to these people. How could anyone know? They cannot return to tell, cannot communicate from where they have gone. But there are theories. Grace has shared what the spirits have revealed through her trances, what ancestral spirits have suggested through dreams and signs. Some taken people become Juzu themselves, are transformed, lose their human nature, become water spirits, join the spiritual ecology of the river. This is not reward, is not blessing, is loss of self, loss of humanity, becoming something else. Something that might retain fragments of memory from human life, but is no longer human in any meaningful sense. Your grandfather speculated that Thomas, the young man who fell overboard and disappeared, might have become Juzu. Might be one of the shapes you sense sometimes when fishing. Might be part of the river's spiritual presence. If so, Thomas no longer knows he was Thomas. No longer remembers his family. No longer has human concerns or human emotions. He is water spirit now. Is part of the river. Belongs to the river completely. This is terrifying fate. Worse than death. Death at least maintains identity. Allows spirit to move to ancestral realm. Allows continued existence as self. Claiming that transforms you into Njuzu means losing self entirely. Means becoming something else. Means your identity is erased and replaced with something that is not you in any real sense. Some claims are different still. Are taking but not transforming. Are imprisonment rather than destruction or transformation. These are the ones who haunt specific locations. Who remain at death sites. Who become troubled spirits themselves. Who spend eternity trapped in moment of their claiming. Repeating it endlessly. Never able to move forward. Never able to rest. These are the voices that call from water. The presences that lure others to same fate. They are not malevolent by choice. Are trapped in pattern. Are repeating what happened to them. Are trying to reach out. To be rescued. To be freed. But they cannot be freed. And reaching toward them only results in joining them. In becoming another trapped spirit. Another voice calling. Another presence luring. Then there are the ones taken for purpose. Grace has suggested that sometimes spirits claim people because they need something. Need information. Need service. Need mediation. These claims are temporary. The person is taken into spirit realm. Held there. Used for whatever purpose. Then released. Returned to human world. These returns are rare. Most people who are claimed do not return. But a few have. Fishermen who disappeared for days or weeks. Were given up for dead. Then reappeared. Alive. But changed. Traumatized. Unable to speak clearly about what happened. Fragmentary memories. Terrifying glimpses. Confusion about where they were and what was done to them. Your Uncle Joseph was one of these. 40 years ago, before you were born. He went fishing and did not return. For 3 weeks he was gone. Family mourned. Assumed he was dead. Performed preliminary funeral rites even without a body. Then he walked into the village. Alive. Soaking wet. Naked. Confused. Barely able to speak. He never fully recovered. Never clearly explained where he had been. He would say fragments. They needed me to see something. They wanted human witness. They showed me the underwater. I lived there. I breathed water. I walked in the river beneath the river. None of it made complete sense. Made partial sense. Suggested he had been in spirit realm. Had experienced the river's spiritual dimension directly. Had been shown things. Used for something. Then released. Joseph never fished again. Never went near the river. The trauma was too deep. The experience too overwhelming. He had seen what humans should not see. Had been where humans should not go. Had survived it but was permanently marked by it. Changed by it. Broken by it in ways that never healed. These stories teach you that the spirit's purposes are not always comprehensible. That being claimed does not always mean simple death. That the river's spiritual ecology operates by rules and reasons that humans cannot fully understand. That respect and caution are essential because you never know which type of claiming might result from which violation. The wisdom of acceptance. After 20 years on the river, you have learned something essential. Something that goes beyond specific rules or specific practices. You have learned to accept mystery. To accept that you cannot understand everything. To accept that some things should not be understood. To accept that the boundary between human knowledge and spirit realm is necessary. Is protective. Is good even when it feels limiting. You do not need to understand why spirits enforce the sunset boundary. Knowing that they do is sufficient. Respecting it is sufficient. Trusting the accumulated wisdom of generations who learn through experience is sufficient. The modern world demands explanations. Demands understanding. Demands that everything be comprehensible to human reason. But the river teaches different wisdom. Teaches that some things simply are. That mystery is not obstacle but reality. That accepting limits on human understanding is maturity, not ignorance. You have stopped trying to explain the spirits to those who do not believe. You once tried. Tried to convince skeptics. Tried to provide evidence. Tried to make logical arguments for spiritual realities. It never worked. Those who have not experienced the river's spiritual dimension cannot be convinced through argument. They must experience it themselves. And even then, some will rationalize. Will create naturalistic explanations. Will refuse to see what is plainly evident. So you stop trying. You now simply say, the river has rules. Follow them and you will be safe. Violate them and you will face consequences. Believe in the spirits or do not believe. The reality of the spirits is independent of your belief. This satisfies no one. But it is truth. And you have learned that truth does not require validation from those who refuse to see it. You have learned to be comfortable with not knowing everything. With not understanding why the spirits do what they do. With not being able to predict their responses. With living in relationship with forces more powerful than yourself that cannot be controlled or fully comprehended. This comfort with mystery is itself wisdom. Is maturity. Is understanding that humans are not center of existence. Are not ultimate authority. Are not entitled to complete knowledge. The river has taught you humility. You are good fishermen. Skilled. Experienced. But you are also small. Temporary. Dependent. The river was here before you. Will be here after you. The spirits were here before you. Will be here after you. Your presence on the river is privilege granted by forces that could withdraw it at any moment. This awareness keeps you respectful, keeps you grateful, keeps you safe. You have learned that fear is not weakness, that respecting the sunset boundary is not cowardice, that making offerings is not groveling, that acknowledging powers greater than yourself is not diminishment. Fear in presence of genuine danger is wisdom. Respect in presence of genuine power is appropriate. Offerings in acknowledgement of genuine dependence are honest. The modern world often teaches opposite. Teaches that fear is weakness. That humans should be fearless. Should conquer nature. Should dominate rather than coexist. Should extract maximum value rather than maintain reciprocal relationships. This teaching has created enormous problems, has damaged ecosystems, has destroyed relationships between humans and natural world, has created arrogance that leads to catastrophe. You have chosen different path. Path of respect. Path of reciprocity. Path of acknowledging that you are part of larger ecology that includes forces you do not control. This path has served you well, has kept you safe, has provided for your family, has maintained your relationships with both the river and the spirits that inhabit it, has given you life of meaning and purpose and connection to something larger than yourself. Teaching the next generation. Your youngest daughter, Blessing, is 8 years old. She has begun asking to come fishing with you. This is the age when teaching must begin in earnest. When the next generation must learn not just the practical skills of fishing, but the spiritual protocols that keep them safe. The knowledge must pass forward, must be transmitted, must survive into the future. You begin carefully. First lessons are not on the water, are at home, are stories. The same stories you heard as child. Thomas who violated the sunset rule. The brothers who were nearly taken. Ruth who looked directly at Njuzu. Joseph the spirit medium who overestimated his protection. You tell these stories not as entertainment, as education, as warnings that might save her life someday. Blessing listens with wide eyes. She is young enough to believe completely. Has not yet absorbed skepticism from school. Has not yet learned to dismiss traditional knowledge as superstition. She accepts the stories as truth. Asks questions. But why do the spirits get angry? What do the Njuzu look like? Can the spirits hurt children too? You answer honestly. Do not sugarcoat. Do not make the spirits seem less dangerous than they are. Children need to understand the stakes. Need to develop healthy fear that will keep them safe. The spirits enforce boundaries that must not be crossed. Njuzu look beautiful but also wrong, too perfect, too strange. And yes, spirits do not care if you are child or adult. The rules apply to everyone. The river does not make exceptions for age. Blessing becomes more careful near the river. Stops playing too close to the edge. Starts asking permission before going near water. Starts insisting that her friends follow safety rules too. She has absorbed the lessons. Has developed the respect and caution that will serve her throughout life. After weeks of stories, you begin practical teaching. You take her to the river at dawn. Show her how to make offerings. She is too young to go on the water yet. But she can learn the protocols. Can learn the prayers. Can learn to recognize signs of spirit presence. Can begin developing the spiritual awareness that will eventually keep her safe when she is old enough to fish. She scatters maize meal on the water. Her small hands uncertain but reverent. She watches the meal float and disperse. Did they accept it? She asks. You show her how to feel the atmosphere. How to sense whether the river is welcoming or warning. How to trust her instincts about safety. The river feels calm, she says. It feels okay. She is right. She is beginning to develop the sensitivity that will serve her well. You show her the boat. Explain how it must be checked before each use. How damage can be sign of spirit interference. How maintenance is both practical and spiritual act. She runs her small hands along the carved wood. Did grandfather make this boat? She asks. His grandfather made it, you tell her. And someday this knowledge will be yours to pass forward too. Your son James, despite his skepticism, has also learned. You realize this one day when he insists on leaving the river early. You plan to fish another hour. The sun was still well above horizon. But James was agitated. We need to go. Now. You looked at him. Saw genuine fear in his eyes. Saw that whatever he believed intellectually, viscerally he had absorbed the cultural knowledge. Had developed the instinct. You did not argue. Began heading to shore immediately. Later you asked what had made him want to leave. I don't know, he said. Just a feeling. Like something was wrong. Like we needed to be off the water. This is exactly right. This is the sensitivity being transmitted. James might deny believing in spirits. But his body knows. His instincts know. His cultural consciousness knows. The knowledge is passing forward even through resistance. This gives you hope. Even as modern world erodes traditional beliefs, even as education teaches skepticism, even as Christianity competes with traditional spirituality, the essential knowledge survives, adapts, continues, because it is not just intellectual knowledge, is embodied knowledge, is survival knowledge, is knowledge written into cultural consciousness through generations of experience, cannot be fully erased by one generation's skepticism. The universal Indiana, the particular. The Zambezi River spirits are specific to this place, this river, this culture. But what they represent is universal. Every culture that lives near water has similar beliefs, similar boundaries, similar understandings that water is not just physical resource but spiritual reality, that it must be approached with respect, that it has its own nature, its own requirements, its own enforcement of boundaries. You have heard stories from fishermen from other rivers. The Congo, the Nile, the Niger. Different names for the spirits. Different specific rules. Different rituals. But underlying principles are remarkably similar. Water spirits who control nighttime. Ancestral spirits who protect descendants. Forbidden areas that must never be violated. Offerings that maintain relationship. Sunset boundaries that must not be crossed. This universality suggests something profound. Suggests that the spiritual reality of water is not culturally constructed myth. Is recognition of something real. Something that humans across cultures have independently discovered through experience. Different cultures have developed different languages for describing this reality. Different practices for navigating it. But the reality itself is constant. Even cultures that do not explicitly believe in water spirits maintain similar cautions. European and American folklore is full of water dangers. Kelpies, sirens, river monsters, warnings about swimming at night, cautionary tales about those who drown. The language is different. The conceptual framework is different. But the underlying message is same. Water is dangerous in ways that go beyond physical danger. Must be approached with respect. Has boundaries that must be honored. Modern science validates some of this. Studies show that human psychological state changes near water. That twilight affects judgment. That isolation increases vulnerability. That drowning is more common at certain times. That water does affect consciousness in measurable ways. Science has not explained everything. Has not validated the spirits as independent entities. But has shown that the relationship between humans and water is complex. Is not fully explained by simple physical dynamics. You do not need scientific validation. Know what you have experienced. Know what generations of fishermen have experienced. Know that the spirits are real regardless of how science does or does not measure them. But you find it interesting that even skeptical frameworks are discovering that water is more than H2O. Is environment that affects human consciousness. Is space where unusual things happen. Is context where caution is warranted. The psychological value of the spirit beliefs is also clear. Whether spirits exist as independent entities or as projections of collective human wisdom about water safety, the result is same. People who believe in and respect river spirits survive better than those who do not. The beliefs create appropriate caution. Create respect for natural dangers. Create protocols that prevent accidents. Create community knowledge that protects individuals from their own ignorance or recklessness. Some modern psychologists would say the spirits are metaphors, are ways of encoding practical safety knowledge in memorable, emotionally compelling forms. Stories about Thomas being taken are more effective than simple instructions like, leave the river before sunset. The story creates visceral fear. creates motivation to follow rules, creates cultural transmission that persists across generations. You do not care whether spirits are metaphors or literal beings. The distinction is not meaningful to you. Whether Njuzu exist independently of human consciousness or are created by human consciousness, they function effectively. They protect. They guide. They maintain boundaries. They create relationship between humans and river that is healthy, sustainable, respectful. That is what matters. That is what you care about. That is what you will pass forward to your children. The colonial disruption and persistence. The beliefs about river spirits are ancient, predate colonialism, predate Christianity, predate written history. Our knowledge accumulated across countless generations. Our wisdom refined through thousands of years of experience. Our understanding that has proven itself through survival of those who follow it. But colonialism disrupted this knowledge transmission. Missionaries taught that traditional beliefs were demonic, that ancestral spirits were devils, that offerings were idolatry, that Grace's spirit possession was satanic. Many people abandoned traditional practices, tried to become fully Christian, tried to reject the old ways. The result was catastrophic. Fishing accidents increased. Disappearances multiplied. The river claimed more people. Because severing relationship with spirits did not make spirits stop existing. Did not make the dangers disappear. Just removed the protective knowledge that had kept people safe. Made people vulnerable to forces they were no longer equipped to navigate. After enough tragedy, people returned to traditional practices. But damage had been done. Knowledge had been lost. Elders who held detailed understanding had died before fully transmitting it. Some rituals had been abandoned and could not be perfectly reconstructed. Some sacred sites had been desecrated. Some relationships with spirits had been broken and required extensive repair. Your grandfather's generation had to piece together what remained. Had to relearn what had been deliberately forgotten. Had to rebuild relationships with spirits who had been neglected or insulted. It was difficult. It took years. Some knowledge was permanently lost. But enough was recovered. Enough was reconstructed. Enough was remembered to restore functional relationship with the river. The colonial disruption also created the modern tension between Christianity and traditional beliefs. Many people like you try to hold both. Try to be Christian while maintaining traditional river practices. This creates cognitive dissonance, creates guilt, creates confusion about which spiritual framework is correct. But increasingly, people are finding ways to integrate. Our understanding that God created the river, created the spirits, created the spiritual ecology, that respecting spirits is respecting God's creation, that traditional practices are not rejection of Christianity, but recognition that spiritual reality is complex, that God works through multiple channels, that salvation through Christ does not negate existence of other spiritual forces. Grace has been instrumental in this integration. She is Christian, attends church, prays to Jesus, but also maintains traditional practices, also serves as spirit medium, also makes offerings to river spirits. She explains that these are not contradictory, are complementary, are different aspects of spiritual life that can coexist. Not all Christians agree. Some pastors continue to condemn traditional practices, continue to insist on complete rejection of ancestral beliefs. But these pastors are often from outside, are not from fishing communities, do not depend on river for survival, do not have generations of direct experience with river spirits. Their theology is abstract. Yours is lived, is tested, is validated through survival. The persistence of traditional beliefs despite colonial pressure demonstrates their necessity, demonstrates that they address real needs, provide real protection, maintain real relationships with real forces. They have survived because they work, because people who abandon them suffer, because the river itself enforces their validity through consequences that cannot be rationalized away. The dam and the displacement. The greatest modern threat to traditional knowledge is not skepticism or Christianity, is physical disruption of the river itself, is the dam. Kariba Dam, completed in 1959, created massive reservoir, changed the river fundamentally, flooded vast territories, displaced entire communities, altered spiritual geography of the river. Your grandfather was among those displaced. His village was in the valley that became Lake Kariba. His ancestors' graves were there. The sacred sites his community had used for generations were there. All flooded. All lost beneath water that was suddenly where land had been. The displacement was traumatic. Not just physically, losing homes, losing land, losing livelihoods, but spiritually. The ancestors were underwater. The sacred sites were inaccessible. The relationship with the river was disrupted because the river itself had been transformed. Was no longer river in traditional sense. Was lake. Was altered. Was controlled by dam rather than flowing freely. Nyamanyami was said to be angered by the dam. During construction, many workers died. Mysterious deaths. Drownings. Accidents that seemed beyond natural explanation. The Tonga people said Nyamanyami was attacking, was trying to stop the dam, was defending his river against transformation. But the dam was completed anyway. Nyamanyami's anger did not prevent it, could not prevent it. The power of modern engineering was greater than the power of traditional spirits, or so it seemed. The river was dammed. The valley was flooded. The displacement happened. And people had to adapt to this new reality. But Nyamanyami did not disappear. The spirits did not abandon the river just because it had been changed. They adapted. They maintained presence in the altered landscape. The sunset rule still applied. The forbidden areas existed in new locations. The spiritual ecology reorganized around the new physical reality but remained present, remained powerful, remained demanding of respect. Your grandfather learned to fish the lake, learned its new patterns, learned where spirits were active in this transformed space, learned which areas were forbidden. It was different from fishing the river, but the underlying spiritual principles remained. Offerings were still necessary. Boundaries were still enforced. Respect was still required. The dam demonstrated something important. Human power can alter physical reality dramatically, can change rivers into lakes, can flood valleys, can relocate communities. But human power cannot eliminate spiritual reality, cannot remove the spirits, cannot make the sacred profane simply through engineering. The spirits adapt, continue, persist, maintain their presence and their power regardless of physical changes. This is encouraging. Means that even as modern world continues to change the physical environment, even as development transforms landscapes, even as technology seems to dominate nature, the spiritual dimension persists, adapts, finds new expressions, continues to make demands, continues to enforce boundaries, continues to require human respect and acknowledgement. The eternal river. You stand on the shore at sunset. This is your daily ritual. Watch the sun descend. Watch the transformation. Watch as the river shifts from day space to night space, from human domain to spirit domain. You are not on the water. are safely on shore. But you witness the boundary moment. Bear witness to the change. The sun touches the horizon. The light shifts. Golden becomes red, becomes purple, becomes dark. The water's surface changes. Becomes mirror-like. Becomes reflective in ways it is not during day. Becomes window into something else. Something beneath. Something beyond. You feel the shift. The air changes. The temperature drops slightly. The sounds change. Birds quiet, night insects begin. But more than these physical changes, something else shifts. Something in the atmosphere. In the spiritual environment. The presence that was distant during day becomes immediate. Becomes close. Becomes attentive. The river is watching. Is aware. Is reclaiming itself. Is becoming fully what it is rather than what humans use it for. This transformation happens every single night. Has happened for thousands of years. Will happen for thousands more. Is eternal cycle. Is boundary that has always existed and will always exist regardless of human recognition or disrespect. You whisper the evening prayer. Nyami nyami, great serpent, the day is ending. The river is yours. I acknowledge your sovereignty. I have taken only what I needed. I have respected your boundaries. I have honored your spirits. I thank you for your provision. I ask your continued blessing. I release the river to your full control. May your waters flow freely through the night. May your spirits move without hindrance. May the balance be maintained. This prayer is not required. No rule says you must pray at sunset. But you do it anyway. Feels right. Feels like proper closure to the day. Feels like maintaining relationship even when not actively fishing. The spirits notice such gestures. Appreciate them. Respond more favorably to those who show consistent respect than to those who show respect only when actively needing something. You turn away from the river. Walk home. Behind you, the river continues its transformation. Becomes fully spirit territory. Becomes place where humans do not belong. Becomes itself in ways that day does not allow. You do not see what happens on the night river. Do not want to see. Know that some mysteries are better left mysterious. Some boundaries are better left uncrossed. Some knowledge is not for human consciousness. At home, your family gathers. Blessing asks about the day. About the catch. About whether you saw anything unusual. You tell her about the fish. About the eagles. About the peaceful day on the water. You do not tell her about the moment when you felt watched. When presence became particularly strong. When you increased offerings and the pressure eased. She is too young for such details. Will learn them when she is older. When she needs to know. James is quiet. He has been thinking. You can see it in his face. Finally he speaks. I want to learn properly. Want to learn everything. Not just the fishing but the spiritual parts. The offerings. The prayers. The interpretations. Everything. You are surprised. Pleased. He has been so resistant. But something has changed. Something has convinced him. What changed your mind, you ask? He is quiet for a moment. Then, I had a dream. About grandfather. He was angry. Said I was disrespecting what he had taught. Said I was putting myself in danger through ignorance. Said I needed to learn. Needed to respect. Needed to carry forward the knowledge. You nod. This is how it often happens. Direct spiritual intervention when education through normal channels is insufficient. We will begin tomorrow, you tell him. After the fishing. I will teach you everything I know. Everything grandfather taught me. Everything Grace has explained. You will learn. You will understand. You will carry this knowledge forward. James nods. Seems relieved. Seems to have accepted something he had been fighting. Seems ready to embrace the spiritual dimension he had tried to deny. This is how the knowledge survives. Through dreams. Through experiences. Through direct spiritual intervention when necessary. Through teaching when possible. Through multiple channels. Through persistence. Through adaptation. Through refusal to disappear no matter how much pressure modern world applies. The meaning beyond fear. The title of this story focuses on fear. Why Zimbabwean fishermen fear the Zambezi River spirits after the sun sets. Fear is accurate, is real, is appropriate response to genuine danger. But fear is not the whole story, is not the deepest meaning, is not what the relationship with the river is ultimately about. The deeper meaning is respect, is recognition, is relationship. The spirits are not enemies to be feared, are forces to be understood, powers to be acknowledged, presences to be lived alongside. The sunset rule is not just prohibition, is recognition of shared space, is acknowledgement that river belongs to more than humans, that others have claim, have rights, have requirements that must be honored. The offerings are not just payments or bribes, our recognition of dependence, our acknowledgement that you do not control the river, that the river provides but is not obligated to provide. That provision is gift that requires gratitude. That relationship requires reciprocity. The offerings maintain balance, maintain recognition that humans are part of larger ecology, are not masters but participants. The stories are not just warnings, are teaching about proper relationship with power beyond human control, about humility in face of mystery, about accepting that human knowledge is limited, that human power is limited, that wisdom includes recognizing limits. The stories maintain cultural knowledge about how to live beside forces that are greater than humans, how to survive, how to thrive, how to maintain balance. The fear serves purpose, but beneath fear is something else, is understanding that you are part of something larger, that your life is embedded in spiritual ecology that predates you, that will survive you, that provides context and meaning and connection. The spirits are not just threats, are part of what makes the river sacred, what makes fishing more than just economic activity, what makes your life meaningful beyond simple survival. When you are on the water, you are not alone. You are in relationship with the river, with the fish, with the birds, with the spirits, with your ancestors, with generations of fishermen who came before and will come after, with Nyamanyami who maintains the river's existence, with Njuzu who populate its depths, with the entire web of seen and unseen that makes up the Zambezi's reality. This relationship gives your life meaning, makes you part of story larger than yourself, makes your daily work sacred work, makes your survival dependent not just on skill but on proper relationship, makes you conscious that you are participating in something ancient, something profound, something that will continue long after you are gone. The sunset boundary is not prison, is recognition of shared world, is acknowledgement that others have claims to space and time, that humans do not own everything, that some places sometimes belong to others, that respecting these boundaries is not weakness but maturity, is not limitation but wisdom. The river continues. The Zambezi flows, has flowed for millions of years, will flow for millions more. Civilizations rise beside it, fall, are forgotten. The river continues. The spirits continue. The boundaries continue. The sunset rule continues. Independent of human recognition. Independent of human belief. Independent of human compliance or violation. You are temporary. Your children are temporary. Your community is temporary. But the river is eternal. The spirits are eternal. The relationship between humans and the powers of water is eternal. This perspective makes your individual fears and concerns seem small, makes your life seem brief. But it also makes your participation in this eternal story seem significant, makes your choices matter because you are carrying forward something that transcends individual existence. When you die, and you will die probably while still fishing because this is the life you have chosen, your spirit will join your grandfather's, will become part of the river's spiritual ecology, will watch over your children as they fish, will guide them when you can, will be part of the eternal presence that makes the river more than water, that makes it sacred space, that makes it home to forces that demand respect. This continuity is comforting, is reassuring, is promise that you are part of something that does not end with your individual death, that your life has meaning beyond your individual existence, that you are a link in chains stretching from ancient past into distant future, that the knowledge you carry will continue, will be passed forward, will protect generations not yet born. The fear of the sunset hour is small part of this larger story, is practical necessity, is survival knowledge, is boundary that must be maintained, but it exists within context of relationship, of respect, of recognition, of participation in spiritual ecology that is ancient, eternal, powerful, and ultimately benevolent when approached correctly. The final truth. This is the sleepy griot. And these are the truths about the Zambezi River spirits. About why fishermen fear the sunset hour. About why boundaries exist. About why respect is necessary. About why the old ways persist despite modern skepticism. About why the spirits remain real regardless of belief or disbelief. The river teaches humility. Teaches that humans are not masters of nature. Are participants in systems we do not control. Are dependent on forces we do not fully understand. Are required to respect boundaries we did not create and cannot change. This humility is wisdom, is maturity, is recognition of truth. The river teaches relationship, teaches that nothing exists in isolation, that everything is connected, that your actions affect spiritual as well as physical dimensions, that offerings maintain balance, that respect generates protection, that violation creates consequences, that reciprocity is law of existence. The river teaches mystery, teaches that not everything can be explained, not everything can be understood, not everything should be understood, that some boundaries should not be crossed, that some knowledge is not for human consciousness, that accepting mystery is not weakness but wisdom. The river teaches continuity, teaches that you are part of story larger than yourself, that knowledge must be passed forward, that the spirits were here before you, will be here after you, that your choices affect not just yourself but generations, that you have responsibility to maintain relationships you inherited, to pass forward knowledge you received, to protect what has been entrusted to you. The river teaches fear, but also teaches that fear, properly understood, is respect, is recognition, is appropriate response to forces greater than yourself, is not cowardice but wisdom, is not limitation but protection, is not weakness but strength that comes from knowing your limits and respecting them. Before the fire went out, that's when the best stories were told. And now the fire is out. The story is told. The lesson is given. May you understand that boundaries exist for reason. That fear is sometimes wisdom. That respect for spiritual forces is not superstition but recognition of reality. That relationships with powers beyond human control require humility, offerings, acknowledgement, and consistent respect. May you recognize that sunset boundaries exist in many forms. That transition times are dangerous times. That thresholds between states require caution. That respecting boundaries, even when you do not fully understand them, is key to survival. May you understand that modern skepticism does not eliminate ancient truths. That science does not explain everything. That some knowledge is preserved in stories, in rituals, in practices that seem primitive but contain accumulated wisdom of thousands of years. May you remember that water is more than H2O. That rivers are more than physical phenomena. That some places are shared spaces. That others have claims we must respect. That the visible world is not the only world. That spiritual realities persist regardless of belief. And may you understand that the Zambezi still flows. The spirits still inhabit it. The sunset boundary is still enforced. The rules still apply. The offerings are still necessary. The relationship still must be maintained. Because some truths are eternal. Some boundaries are unchanging. Some wisdom is timeless. The fishermen know this. Have always known. Will always know. Because the river teaches. The spirits enforce. The ancestors remember. And the sunset comes every single day, transforming the river from human space to spirit space, from day world to night world, from known to unknown. Respect the boundary. Honor the spirits. Make the offerings. Follow the rules. Leave before sunset. And live. This is the sleepy griot. These are the truths of the Zambezi. May they keep you safe. May they keep you humble. May they keep you connected to powers and presences that make life more than mere survival. May they keep you part of the eternal story that flows like the river itself, endless, powerful, sacred, and demanding of respect. The river flows. The spirits watch. The boundary holds. The story continues.